she's probably the most distinguished fashion designer in the country, and yet the funny thing is she never wanted to be one. It happened almost by accident. So is that the secret of her success? Well, let's see if she tells us as I introduce you to Ritu Kumar. Welcome to the program, Ritu.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
It's really a stunning outfit you have on. Is that one of your own creations?
It is and it isn't. It's a collage of the various motives from this country, and I do tend to do these innovations quite often.
And in a sense, that's very representative of your style and your tradition.
Yes, perhaps this is what people call my handwriting.
Now, the big difference between you and the other couturiers in India is that you don't actually like to describe yourself as a fashion designer. How would you choose to describe yourself?
I basically think that I am more of a textile designer, and then thereafter somebody who styles the fabrics into clothes which can be worn in the subcontinent and anywhere else. There's a great difference between the two, because one has to be working from the warp and weft stage, and the other one, like they do in the West, comes in only where the stylistic part of it comes in.
The other thing is that you actually enjoy working with textiles, whereas fashion means that you're the handmaiden of the demand of the public.
Yes, not only are you the handmaiden of the demand of the public, but you are supposed to set trends. But when you do textiles, you actually touch a more organic route. You actually get down behind people's psyche, and you don't tell them what they like. It's an aesthetic that you are trying to hone in, rather than dictating what people should be wearing next season.
And the other big difference, surely, is that unlike the big fashion designers in India, at least, you don't hold regular seasonal collections, do you?
Well, I don't think we have a autumn, winter to begin with, and we do have a summer, but I think our fashions in India still go cyclically with nature and also with traditions and religious festivals. And I don't think I can suddenly get up one morning and say, now, okay, green you have to wear in Diwali. This won't happen. And so I don't think there's a great deal of interest in presenting collections unless they are saying something that is going to be newer.
Others just fall into a trap of doing it for the sake of doing it.
Not really. I think each one has a different kind of market that they are catering to. There must be a certain set that wants a change every season, but that is not the way my philosophy works, because I have to work with the crafts area, and I don't like to shake them around too much.
Okay, let's try and understand your philosophy. Let's go back to the very beginning of your story. Both your grandparents came from what today is Pakistan. Was partition then a big trauma for the family?
There was a trauma all over the northern part of India. And there was trauma not only in the physical part of moving from Pakistan, but I think people carried a huge colonial baggage on their backs. And my parents and their generation had this complete nightmarish image of the Western superiority, to say. And also with that falling of all those ideals and those principles and that society, there came a great deal of vacuum, I think, halfway through, where as children we really didn't know whether we were being sent to a convent to understand Western religion or Western thought processes or their way of working, or at the same time we were being told to be rooted to our traditions and our rituals, etc. So it was a very confusing time, plus a very heart-rending time for the northern part of India.
So you grew up in a sense torn between two cultures rather than uniting them within you?
Well, grew up fairly confused, if nothing else. I mean, one just worked through instinct as things changed around you so rapidly. There was a time when in Simla, where my parents used to live on occasion, and in Kashmir, the only thing to do was to ape the British. Otherwise, I mean, you really didn't make it. You weren't.
So were you very proper and very prim when you were young?
Oh, of course, I was sent to one of the primmest and proper schools there could be. There was Tara Hall in Simla. There were 8 girls in the class. And it was extremely claustrophobic, because we were told to read holy pictures and, you know, go to chapel, etc. And I don't know what I was doing there. And I must have rebelled somewhere inside me, because I knew I wanted to get out of there. And I didn't know how to do it, because it was the creme de la creme school there was in the country. And I realized there was something wrong here, because I was so insulated and isolated from what I knew my roots were in Amritsar. I mean, it was like going to 2 different worlds. One world was the school world with the holy pictures, rosaries, and complete antiseptic cleanliness. And the other one was the bazaars around Golden Temple. I mean, the 2 worlds somehow didn't meet in my head.
So how did you equate these 2 worlds?
I didn't. I made enough of a nuisance of myself that I got out of that school, and I was instantly sent to another boarding school in Dalhousie.
Another convent again?
Another convent again.
Is this when you decided that the only way to beat the system was to join it, and you decided you wanted to be a nun?
perhaps it was a blackmail for my parents to say, now this is it, I'm not going to stay here that long. I think it was a good thing that I did leave, because thereafter I studied in Amritsar, and it was, even though it was a Sacred Heart, it put you in touch with really the middle class of India. We weren't in that very isolated chunk of the world with our parents, friends, etc. I was really in a school where people from all walks of life came. And I think that gave me my first understanding of what people wore, why they wore them, and from what cultural base it was coming from.
I'm told that, in fact, you were quite a determined and headstrong person, even as a young child. There was a moment when, in fact, you had a little run-in with Panditji at one of your schools.
Well, yes, Panditji was supposed to come to a concert, and I must have practiced for a week. Being a fairy, I'm not quite sure what it was. And he arrived, but he arrived late. And then I was told that I could just go and give him a bouquet of flowers, but he couldn't stay for my performance. So I really was cross. So I went across to him. And he was amazing. I just walked up and he said, here are your flowers, but I'm really angry because I really have rehearsed, and so have the rest of the kids, and I believe you're not staying back for a little drama.
How old were you at the time?
Oh, he put me on his lap, so I couldn't have been very, very old. And he was amazing. He said, I am so sorry. And he sat down, and he sat through the performance. And I think he must have gone back way, way later than he should have gone, but
so
he
this
did.
is why your family says what Ritu wants, Ritu gets.
Is that what this is? I didn't know. Well, if I think it's important enough to go for it, I do give it my best, yes.
Now, after school, you came to college in Delhi, where you studied for a Bachelor of Education. Very strange degree for you, isn't it?
No, as a matter of fact, before that, it was a Bachelor of Home Science. I went to Lady Irwin in the conventional way most people were sent to these good colleges, which meant safe, actually. And I must have slept through those 3 years, but I think something went into my head, because it was not only home science. They did biochemistry. There was a great deal of learning of textiles itself now that I look back on it. And I think education is something I've always been interested in. So I went to do my Bachelor's of Education, and thereafter I have to thank Lady Irwin for giving me a scholarship to go to Briarcliff in America.
Before you went to Briarcliff, you met while you were at Lady Irwin the man who went on to become your husband, didn't you?
Wasn't that fortunate? Yes, I did.
How did it happen?
He was my classmate's brother, and she got married, and I went to Calcutta to attend her wedding.
And fell in love yourself?
I met him on Howrah Station at Calcutta, and he was very British. He'd just come back from England, and
everything you were rebelling against.
I'm not quite sure. I still didn't know what I was rebelling against, but there was something about that mixed match there between being that Calcutta gentleman, he was young, he was 23, and that British kind of upbringing that he'd got from England. That was quite a deadly combination.
Swept you off your feet?
I think it did. It did.
Okay, you went then to Briarcliff College in America, and you've often said that this was, in fact, perhaps the most important intellectual experience of your life. Why was Briarcliff so important?
I think it was the turning point of my life. It must have been for a lot of people my age, when they, it was like a revelation. You went to college and you looked at yourself and your country with a completely different perspective. I was studying Western art, and in an art college and a drama college, but that was studying, people don't have any racial connotations. You're actually talking pure aesthetics. You're being taught to understand a sculpture or a painting and what makes it, what doesn't make it happen. And sitting there, my teacher was a gentleman called Mr. Sisley. He was the most wonderful teacher, and that's why halfway through the year I realized I knew nothing about India, knew nothing about Indian art. I don't remember having seen a sculpture or a painting. I didn't know where Ajanta was.
So sitting in America, you turned your eyes and your interest Indiawards.
Well, not only, I began doing 2 courses. I was studying Western art, and I used to study Indian art at night to understand and not look or sound so ignorant. So when I came back, actually that was one of the most important influences in my life. And when I came back, I really did want to study Indian art.
But how did you then drift into textiles and design?
I was studying museology in Ashutosh Museum in Calcutta after I got married. And one day, I realized that I would eventually end up in a museum, and I realized that this was really one of the last things that I wanted to do with my life, because by that time I had gone on for a couple of anthropological digs and archaeological areas around Calcutta and got to know the countryside and got in touch with the craftspeople in that area.
So you pulled yourself out of the museum and into a living tradition.
It didn't need much pulling. I was absolutely fascinated by how a block maker was carving a block very, very akin to what a sculptor would do to one of the sandstone terracottas there were in Bengal. There was very little difference. There's no difference really in that part of the world or in most of India between art and craft. They are very linked. And here was a human situation, and I said, where has their repertoire gone? I mean, I started reading about Indian textiles.
And did you step in a sense, to try and save it before the handicraft tradition died?
I didn't even know it was there to begin with. So first I had to discover that, you know, to convince myself that there was this great tradition in India which went down 5,000 years. And we were the largest and the biggest and the most important textile creators of the world, and all the textiles to the world went out of India.
So it was a series of accidents in a sense which took you to textiles, and I gather a very similar series of accidents which lie behind your first shop opening in Delhi.
Yes, that's true. That did happen. I mean, I was beginning to get blocks made and recreate the old motifs and trying to see where this repertoire of or this lexicon of design was in India, which had been lost by that time. There was no handicrafts, there were no fabrics to be found or got the way you see them today in India.
And this is when your aunt stepped in and said, I'm setting up a flower shop, set up at the back with a little shop of your own.
That's right. And I wasn't sure what I was going to set up, but I did definitely wanted to do some trendy clothes, as well as perhaps put in some printed saris. There was such a mixture in my head as to what I wanted to do. But we did open that shop.
And I believe the location in Defence Colony made all the difference.
Well, it was a shop on the left-hand side behind the railway crossing, which now goes on to Oberoi Hotel. And everyone used to get stuck on that railway crossing. And they had to look left or right. On the left, there was this big board which said Ritu's. And I think that's the reason why we got to be known. And people perhaps sometimes got bored and just popped in.
Thank God for railway crossings.
Thank God for railway crossings.
But you didn't have so much luck when you came up with your first collection of saris in Calcutta. I gather they were a bit of a disaster.
Well, what I had done was I had gone around about 12 printing areas in the country and revived those blocks, remade them, recreated them, and I printed a whole series which I called Jaipur, Mysore, etc., and put it up as almost an art exhibition, and thought I had done a fantastic job. After 2 days, I think we sold 2 out of about 36, and that also because they were good friends who came in and didn't know quite how to leave without picking up a sari. And it came to me that either I had got it wrong or people were really not interested in old designs. I must tell you what Calcutta was like at that time. Everybody looked like flowers. They were so pretty. They were all in chiffon saris with lovely pastel roses painted in France, dripping with lots of pearls.
And you gave them bed covers to wear, I gather.
No, well, not only did I give them bed cover looking designs, but I even put them on cotton khadi. Now, I mean...
A double no-no.
A complete no-no. And there was a comment that, listen, this looks like, you know, my grandmother's old clothes.
So what did you do?
Well, first of all, I was very hurt and I thought that nobody else had any taste. And then I thought this one out and I said, this is ridiculous. They can't be talking nonsense. I got it wrong. I got the fabric wrong. Nobody minded the designs. I put them onto chiffons. I mean, this was the first time hand printing was done on chiffons. I mean, there was a mixture of a handicraft with a machine-made product.
So Indian design on French chiffon, and you had the whole of Calcutta wearing Ritu's clothes?
Yeah, because I think they didn't want to wear polka dots anymore. It perhaps reminded them of something that was part of the British era or whatever, but this became the rage. And it was copied by everybody in Banaras and Ahmedabad till any design that we made for saris. Before we knew it, all the mills had got it and it was all over the country. But it did do something, Karan. It did introduce an Indian aesthetic or an Indian lexicon of design back into the country.
Which you built upon in a big way in the 80s when you introduced your collections now known as Zardosi, Kashida and Karabagh. Tell me, how much research lay behind those? Because it looks so beautiful, but I must imagine that it took years of research.
It did. It took more years than I can even think of working out in terms of chronology, but more than that, you were actually working all the time. I mean, it was reading, it was traveling all over the museums abroad, because most Indian textiles are now available only outside. Now recently there are more museums here, so I didn't even have a context to study.
So it was almost like an academic study field.
It was. It wasn't almost, it was like going back to college. And to locate those motives, it was hard work, and it was very, very exciting at the same time. So whether it was embroidery design, or whether it was whatever design there was, they had to go hand in hand with that, a great deal of research.
Well, it was extremely rewarding. So let's take a break. I want in part 2 to talk about not just the new look that you created for Indian women, but all the other amazing things that you've done as well. We'll be back in just a couple of moments. Stick with us. Welcome back. My guest is Ritu Kumar. Starting with Shushmita Sen and Ashwarya Rai and all the way up to Lara Datta, you've dressed the women who've won the Miss World and the Miss Universe crowns for India. But does that mean it was just a gown for the big night or an entire wardrobe?
I think it was much more a silhouette that was presented out of India, which I was trying to achieve. One garment really doesn't make it. You have to be very conscious of the way the person is projecting herself. It was really a philosophy more than anything else, that their clothes are beautiful, but at the same time they're not gypsy, and they should come out looking as sophisticated as the next person, but with so much interest in their textiles.
Isn't that a difficult combination when it's Indian clothes, that they don't look gypsy and yet look sophisticated and foreignized?
Well, that's where the trick is, because we always have had sophisticated clothing. You just have to project it and design it in a way that it looks not only elegant, but wonderful.
You've done an awful lot of clothing for the foreign market. You've made collections for years for shops like Bergdorf Goodman, Harrods and Galeries Lafayette. Is it easy to appeal to Western tastes when you're handling Indian textiles and Indian designs?
No, it's not easy at all, because basically the Western world has become very minimalistic. And the Indian fashion really still depends a lot on drape, on color, on fun, and also not only dressing a size 6, 8 and 10. So what the best things about our fabrics are their quality to flatter. And that becomes difficult to really combine with the Western sense of present dressing.
But then what's the market in the West that you appeal to?
Basically, it's an occasion market. For people who want to go out in the evenings, I don't think that the clothes that we do are corporate wear, but very definitely they fit into the...
So it's not everyday wear, it's special event wear.
It's special event wear. And that is where India will sit always, or it's summer wear, you know, summer dresses.
So what sort of foreigner would come to a Ritu collection and buy it abroad?
Well, abroad our collections are very print-based, but it doesn't definitely have an Indian motif on it. So the collections I do for Europe tend to be very much more worked out for the country that you're working
Would your
with.
Indian customers, for instance, recognize them as your
No,
clothes?
they wouldn't.
They're
No, they
completely
wouldn't.
different.
They're
It's a
completely
totally
different. No,
look.
they wouldn't.
But you've had some great people buying them, haven't you? You've had Princess Diana and Jemima as well, Jemima Khan.
Well, Princess Diana bought what was the Indian handwriting. She went and actually eventually chose one of our salwar kameezes, something like what I was wearing, what I'm wearing in blue, because that's what she wanted. I mean, she didn't want
She wanted to look
yes,
Indian.
No, she just wanted to look dressy. I don't think it was the Indian part of it in her mind, but whenever you wanted to look chic and dressy, she used to come to us. And that is where I think our customer base outside the country is.
Now, you did last year something very new. You did your first book, and it's on the costumes and textiles of Royal India. What drew you to the subject?
Actually, basically documentation. It was a compilation of what I've been doing the last 30 years, and I don't see that material anywhere. So I had a feeling that I must document it, as this whole world is slipping past us so fast, particularly the world of royalty and color and pomp and ceremony. And I had it all in my head, and I had it in some sort of notes, and I thought I should put it down in a book before it got too late.
But was it easy to get India's royal family to open their wardrobes and share their clothes with you?
Not terribly easy, no. But once I had broken the ice, it got easier. The Indian royalty tends to be very private, and they are not very open to exposure the way they are out in the West. So once they realized that it was a book on textiles, it was not a book on their personal lives, things became easier. And then after that it became wonderful. I was wined and dined and looked after in all sorts of places.
And now you're the favorite dresser of the royals in India, are you?
Well, I'm not sure about that, but I definitely have niche there in most of their homes.
One of the most striking photographs in the book is of Tiger Pataudi and Sharmila Tagore wearing what I suspect is their wedding outfits 30 years or a bit more later.
You don't suspect, it's true. It happens to be Tiger Pataudi's mother's wedding outfit that Rinku, Sharmila, is wearing. And
But
that,
did Tiger squeeze into his own?
well, I'm not sure about that, but I think she definitely got into her mother-in-law's bridal outfit, and I think it was great of them. It's very sporting, and they did a great job. They looked fabulous.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. For the last 30 years, you've been a wife, a mother, and a businesswoman. Is it a difficult combination to maintain the balance between the three?
Always. It has been difficult. It was difficult in the 60s and 70s, and I think it still would be difficult for somebody today.
It hasn't got any easier?
Perhaps it's got more difficult. Karan is more competitive. When I was there, I was treated with kid gloves. Everybody thought, my God, how precious, lovely
You were
to
a
see a
novelty.
lady. I was novelty, and I was given a lot of respect and a lot of help. By my family, by the people I was working with, by the craftspeople. Today, I'm not sure it would be that easy out there at the marketplace.
They say that behind every successful man is a strong wife. Would you say the opposite is true as well?
Oh, very definitely. In my case, I don't think I would have been able to get where I have if it wasn't for Shashi, my husband.
So the Englishman on the Calcutta railway station who won you over has proved a brick for the rest of your time.
An absolute brick and a real hard taskmaster as far as results are concerned.
He's the one who makes sure that you produce on time and you meet all the demands.
That's right.
So it's a real partnership, this business.
It's been a partnership that's been going on for almost 30 years now.
Tell me, what next? You've achieved almost everything that fashion designers would dream of. You have shops all over India. You're selling in the choicest stores abroad. Is there a goal left?
Yes, there is a goal. I would like to take the so-called Indian fashion down, much more down to a level in price where more people could afford it. I would like to really do the Indian prep. And I would also like to do it in the Indian fabrics, the khadi, the handlooms, the things that today perhaps may not be around.
You?
Nothing. The retail infrastructure in India has to develop further. And once that is in place, in any case, I've already started making a move towards that. And I would be delighted if somebody could come and buy a suit for 500 rupees.
So one day, many, many more people will be wearing Ritu's creations, but at an affordable price.
That would be nice.
Well, that's a dream we can all look forward to. Ritu, thank you very much for a delightful interview.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.